I've always loved old things. There's something about holding an object with history, with memories, that makes me feel connected to the past in a way nothing else can. That's why I opened Chandra's Antiquities, my little antique shop nestled in the heart of the city. It's small, cluttered, and cozy, just the way I like it. My shelves are filled with china teapots, old clocks, and most importantly, books. Books were my first love. There's something special about the smell of old paper, the gentle crackle of worn pages, and the weight of a leather-bound volume in your hands. Each one has a story to tell beyond the words printed on the pages. It's like holding history itself, fragments of forgotten lives locked away in ink and parchment. One chilly afternoon in October, I was cozying up with a cup of tea before closing up shop. It was one of those perfect fall days when the air outside bites just enough to remind you that winter's on its way, but the warmth inside feels like a sanctuary. The shop was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of a few lamps, and I was just about to pull a blanket over my legs when the phone rang. I hesitated for a moment, considering letting it go to voicemail. It was getting late, and I had already locked the front door, but something, curiosity, I suppose, made me reach for the receiver. Chandra's Antiquities, I answered with a tinge of sleepiness. Miss Chandra? The voice on the other end was raspy, as if the speaker was holding back a cough. I've got a tip for you. A promising lot of antique books just came up from an estate sale downtown. Thought you'd like to know. That piqued my interest. Estate sales often turned up hidden treasures, and the idea of adding more to my growing collection of rare books was enough to wake me from my evening drowsiness. Go on, I said, leaning forward. They're from the estate of a man named Dr. Mortimer Graves, a bit of a recluse, apparently, but word is he had a sizable collection. Everything's going to auction, but the books, they're going fast. My heart quickened at the thought. I had heard the name before. Dr. Graves had been infamous for his eccentricities, an academic rumored to have dabbled in the occult. If this was the collection I thought it might be, it could be the find of a lifetime. Thanks for the tip, I said, scribbling down the details. I'll check it out first thing tomorrow. But even as I hung up the phone, I felt that familiar tug of obsession. I didn't want to wait. I called the auction house immediately, securing the lot with a quick offer. The voice on the other end sounded almost relieved to have them off their hands so quickly. They promised delivery by morning. That night, sleep came slowly. I lay awake in bed, my mind racing with possibilities. What kind of books would I find? Were they rare first editions? Handwritten journals from centuries past? Or perhaps something darker, more secret? The next day, the shipment arrived. The delivery driver dropped off 3 large crates, each filled to the brim with books of varying sizes. As soon as he left, I locked the door, flipped the sign to closed, and set to work, my hands trembling with excitement. The first box contained the usual fare: dusty tomes on history, some Victorian novels, a few philosophy texts. But the second box, well, that's where I found it. Nestled between 2 thick volumes on alchemy was a slim, leather-bound book that seemed far older than the rest. The cover was cracked and worn, its color somewhere between brown and black, like charred wood. There was no title, just an eerie spiral symbol etched into the front, the lines so intricate they seemed to shift when I looked at them too long. My pulse quickened. I couldn't explain why, but I felt drawn to the book, as though it had been waiting for me. I sat down at my desk, tea forgotten, and carefully opened it. The pages were brittle with age. The ink faded, but I could still make out the text. Latin, of course. But not just Latin. There was something else there, too. Something older. A language I couldn't quite recognize, but felt disturbingly familiar. The first page read, "The Grimoire of Belthorin." I froze. I knew that name. Belthorin was infamous, a name whispered in academic circles, tied to stories of forbidden rituals, dark magic, and whispered curses. He was an occultist, a necromancer, some said, whose work had been banned, burned, and lost to history. Yet here it was, in my hands. The excitement I had felt earlier twisted into something colder. I should have stopped right there, closed the book, and shoved it back into the box. But I didn't. Instead, I turned the page. As I read, an uncomfortable tension filled the room, as if the air had thickened and the shadows deepened. The shop felt different. The ticking of the old clock seemed louder, slower, as though time itself had changed its rhythm. But I kept going. The words on the page became more complex, more cryptic, yet strangely, I found myself understanding them in ways I couldn't explain. Outside, the sky darkened, and I realized a storm was brewing. Thunder rumbled in the distance. But inside the shop, something far more sinister was happening. I lost track of time. It felt like hours, though it might have only been minutes. The deeper I delved into the text, the more disoriented I became. My vision blurred, the room swayed, and the words began to crawl across the page, like living things writhing in ink. Then the lights flickered. At first, I thought it was the storm outside, but then I felt it, a cold breath on the back of my neck, as though someone or something was standing right behind me. I whipped around, but the shop was empty. Or was it? A flash of lightning lit up the room, casting shadows that seemed to twist and contort in unnatural ways. I glanced at the mirror behind the counter and froze. There, in the reflection, was a figure, dark, hooded, standing perfectly still at the far end of the shop. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, and I turned to look, but no one was there. Another flicker of lightning, and the figure was closer. I gasped, stumbling back, clutching the book to my chest. The air had grown thick, oppressive, and with every breath, I felt like I was sinking deeper into something I didn't understand. The shop had changed, warped. The walls seemed to bend, the shelves twisted, the books watching me, their pages rustling as if whispering secrets. My reflection in the mirror was wrong, the face staring back at me twisted, distorted. I tried to run, but the shop seemed to stretch on endlessly, the exit always just out of reach. The figures now, closed in, their eyes glowing with a hunger I couldn't comprehend. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the storm, by the darkness, by the shop itself. And then, silence. Everything went black. They say the shop remains locked and untouched. No one has seen me in weeks. But when the storms come and the air crackles with electricity, you might see me in the shadow, trapped behind the glass, waiting for another romantic heart to wander too close.